The room was dimly lit, a shadowy arena where power and fear intertwined. Heavy drapes hung over the windows, muting the outside world and trapping the tension that simmered within. At the center of this charged atmosphere sat Elena, her back straight and her expression defiant, across the imposing figure of Victor, the ruthless Bratva boss known for his iron grip on both his empire and those who dared to challenge him. This was their first encounter, and already the air crackled with distrust. Victor leaned forward, his dark eyes narrowing as he regarded her with barely concealed contempt. "You think you can just waltz in here, Elena? Do you have any idea what your father did?" His voice was a low growl, each word laced with a mixture of anger and disappointment. Elena felt the weight of his gaze, a tangible force that sought to unnerve her, to remind her of her lineage and the mistakes of the past. But she refused to be cowed. "I am not my father," she shot back, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear that threatened to undermine her bravado. "I did not come here to answer for his sins. I came to find out the truth." The conviction in her tone surprised even her, but she was resolved not to show weakness. She was here to reclaim her narrative, to wrestle back control from the shadows of her father's legacy. Victor's brow furrowed as he processed her words. The intensity of her gaze made him momentarily falter. He had expected a meek response, perhaps even tears, but the fire she held was unexpected. It unsettled him. "Truth? The truth is a luxury you cannot afford, Elena. Your father made enemies. Dangerous ones. And now, they are coming for you." The mention of her father sent a chill down her spine, but she steeled herself. "I don't need your protection, Victor. I can handle whatever comes my way. I won't be intimidated by your threats." Her heart raced as she faced him, a combination of fear and exhilaration coursed through her veins. This was a dangerous game they were playing, but she refused to back down. Victor leaned back, momentarily taken aback by her defiance. He had expected compliance, submission, but this woman had a spirit that seemed unbreakable. The walls he had erected around himself, hardened by years of brutality and loss, began to feel porous. "You are playing with fire," he warned, though his tone had softened slightly, intrigued by her strength. "You don't know what you're truly dealing with." Elena crossed her arms, maintaining her composure. "And I suppose you think you do? You might have built your empire on fear, but I won't let that dictate my choices." The words hung in the air, a challenge that echoed between them. A part of her was terrified of the ramifications of their confrontation, but another part craved this clash, this dance of wills. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, as they stared each other down. Victor felt something shift within him, an unexpected spark ignited by her ferocity. He was used to controlling his surroundings, bending people to his will with a mere glance or a whispered threat. But Elena was different. She didn't flinch. She didn't break. Instead, she stood resolute, and it both frustrated and fascinated him. "If you're so determined to uncover the truth, why not start with what you already know?" he asked, his voice lowering to a more conspiratorial whisper, as if sharing a secret. "Your father was not a man to be trifled with. He made decisions that left a trail of bodies in his wake." Elena's expression darkened at the mention of her father's deeds, the implications weighing heavily on her heart. "I want to understand why," she said softly, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "Why he made those choices. What drove him to become," she hesitated, "that person?" Victor's eyes narrowed, studying her. "Understanding can lead to acceptance, or it can lead to revenge. Which path do you intend to follow?" His question hung in the air, an invitation to explore the depths of her motivations. "I want justice," she declared, her voice now unwavering. "Not just for my father, but for everyone he hurt. I owe it to them to uncover the truth." Victor leaned back, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "Justice is a dangerous game, Elena. It often leads to more pain than resolution." He paused, studying her face for any sign of retreat, but found only determination. "You've got spirit, but this isn't a fairy tale. This is real life. And I'm not afraid of the consequences," she replied, her resolve palpable. This was not the conversation she had anticipated, but it had morphed into something far more complex and revealing. The stakes were higher than she had imagined, but backing down was not an option. Perhaps, Victor mused, his tone shifting to one of reluctant respect. But remember, Elena, in this world, those who seek the truth often pay the highest price. He watched her carefully, gauging her reaction to his words. This was a dangerous game they played, but there was something about her that intrigued him, the way she challenged him, the way her conviction seemed to cut through the darkness that enveloped them. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, he declared, almost as an afterthought, though it felt oddly fitting in the midst of their confrontation. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the room began to shift. It was no longer just a battle of wills, it was a raw exchange of emotions, unearthing the complexities of their lives, their fears, and their desires. The initial harshness between them had morphed into something layered and intricate, setting the stage for a relationship that would be both complicated and tumultuous. But even as they continued to clash, an unspoken understanding began to form, a bond forged in the fires of conflict, testing their limits and revealing their strengths. This was only the beginning, and both Elena and Victor could sense that their paths were irrevocably intertwined, leading them down a road filled with uncertainty and potential danger. Yet, they remained here, in this moment, alive with possibility. As the dim light flickered, casting shadows across Victor's stern face, he couldn't shake the feeling of being ensnared in a web of his own making. His mind wandered to the weight of his position, the responsibilities that loomed large over him like a shadowy specter. Being the Bratva boss was not merely about power, it was about expectations, the relentless pressure to maintain control over every facet of this brutal world. Yet, as he glanced across the room at Elena, he found himself conflicted. There was an undeniable spark, an attraction that tugged at him, despite everything he had built around himself to keep emotions at bay. Elena was unlike anyone he had encountered before. Her resilience was disarming, cutting through his hardened exterior. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you?" he said, his voice a low growl. He couldn't help but admire her tenacity, even as it frustrated him. Every action in this life comes with a price. You seem willing to pay it, but have you considered what it might cost you? Elena's gaze was unwavering, and for a moment, Victor felt a flicker of doubt in his conviction. He had spent years being resolute, demanding respect and obedience, but here was this woman, challenging him at every turn. "I'm not afraid of the cost," she replied, her confidence palpable. "I want to know the truth about my father and what he did. I deserve that much." For a heartbeat, he remained silent, studying her with an intensity that would have unnerved most. "Wanting the truth can lead you down a dark path, Elena," he warned, though he was increasingly aware of the tremors of attraction stirring just beneath the surface. "You might not like what you find." "I'm not here to play games," she said, her voice steady. "I want justice. My father was a monster, but I need to understand why he made those choices. What twisted him into that person?" There was a vulnerability in her question, a crack in her facade that revealed how deeply the past haunted her. Victor leaned back, crossing his arms, feeling the tension vibrate between them like a taut string ready to snap. "You think you'll find justice in this world?" His voice was laced with skepticism. "You'll find retribution, yes, but justice? That's a luxury here." Elena's determination only seemed to intensify his interest. "Maybe that's what the world needs, a little more justice," she shot back, emboldened by the heat of their exchange. "I refuse to let fear dictate my actions." As he regarded her, Victor felt an unsettling mixture of admiration and caution. He had built his life on fear, fear of betrayal, fear of failure, fear of weakness. But here was Elena, standing defiantly in front of him, radiating strength and purpose. "And you think you can stand against the tide?" he asked, intrigued. "There are forces at play that you cannot begin to comprehend." "I have to start somewhere," she argued. "If I can uncover the truth, I can make sense of it all." A smirk tugged at the corners of Victor's mouth. "You're braver than most. But bravery without caution can be reckless. This isn't a fairy tale, this is the Mafia. The consequences are real, and they can be deadly." He could feel the edges of his control slipping as he engaged with her, drawn in by her fierceness. "But perhaps that's exactly what I'm counting on," Elena replied, her voice dropping to a whisper that resonated with a challenge. What better way to fight the darkness than to confront it head-on? The two locked eyes, a moment stretched thin with tension and unspoken understanding. Victor registered the subtle shift in his own heart, a pang of excitement mixed with danger. He was a man accustomed to calling the shots, yet Elena unraveled the tightly wound threads of his world with every word. "You're playing a dangerous game," he warned, though he could sense a flicker of admiration for her spirit. "I'm tired of being a pawn in someone else's game," she declared, her resolve palpable. "I will find out what happened, and I will not be intimidated. I refuse to be afraid." As he listened, something within Victor shifted. He had spent years hardening himself to the emotional chaos that swirled around the Mafia world. Yet Elena's boldness stirred something long buried within him, a flicker of hope or perhaps a longing for something more than the life he had resigned himself to. "Very well," he murmured, "but tread carefully. The truth, when revealed, can be a double-edged sword." Elena's determination burned bright. "I'm willing to take that risk," she replied. "Not just for myself, but for everyone affected by my father's actions." The air crackled with a mix of vulnerability and defiance as they stood on the precipice of a shifting dynamic. Victor wondered if he had made a mistake in underestimating her resolve. "Leave a like to help the channel grow," he said, though the words slipped from his mouth almost absently, a strange interjection amidst their fervent exchange. The tension between them hung thick, woven into their dialogue and the potential for alliance that flickered just beneath the surface. As time stretched, Victor realized that their interactions were not merely a clash of wills but an intricate dance, a push and pull that revealed layers of complexity in both their characters. Elena's search for the truth began as a mission for justice, but it was evolving into something more, an exploration of their intertwined fates. She was determined to break free from her father's shadow, while Victor was caught in the very web of darkness he had spun around himself. They were both trapped in a labyrinth of choices, and the path forward remained unclear. With every word, every challenge, they inched closer to an understanding, a tentative connection forged in the fire of conflict. The stakes had never been higher, and as they stood on the edge of this uncharted territory, both Elena and Victor sensed that their destinies were more intertwined than they could ever have anticipated. This was just the beginning, and the road ahead promised both danger and possibility. Elena's resolve solidified as she stood alongside Victor, their alliance forged in the crucible of shared adversity. The Bratva leader, with his imposing presence and steely demeanor, was an enigma that intrigued her even as she understood the dangers of trusting him. It was becoming increasingly apparent that their paths were intertwined, each step forward necessitating a careful balance of caution and courage. As they walked through the shadowy corridors of the Bratva's headquarters, Elena could feel the weight of Victor's watchful gaze on her. She knew he was assessing her, trying to gauge her intentions. The flickering lights cast long shadows, mirroring the duplicity of their situation. In this world of deception, where loyalty was as fleeting as smoke, Elena felt a surge of determination. She would not be just another pawn in this lethal game, she would assert her agency. "Stay close," Victor said, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the empty hall. "Trust is a luxury we can't afford." Elena nodded, her heart racing. "I understand that, Victor. But I need you to trust me too. We're in this together now." He snorted, a sound that was half amused and half contemptuous. "You think it's that easy? Trust isn't given, it must be earned. And you're standing in a world where betrayal is the norm." "But you need me," Elena replied, her voice steady. "I know the stakes are high, but there are things you don't understand about my father's connections. I can help you navigate this storm." Victor stopped, turning to face her fully. The intensity of his gaze sent a shiver down her spine, yet she held her ground. "And why should I believe you? Your father's legacy doesn't exactly scream loyalty or honesty." "Because I'm not him," she shot back, her words punctuated with a fierce determination. "I'm not willing to let his mistakes define my future. If I'm going to uncover the truth, I need your help. And I need you to be honest with me." A moment of silence stretched between them, thick with unsaid words and shared burdens. Victor's expression was inscrutable, the mask of the ruthless boss firmly in place, yet Elena sensed a flicker of something deeper, a crack in his hardened exterior. His jaw clenched slightly, betraying the conflict simmering beneath the surface. Fine, he conceded, though his tone suggested reluctance. But know this, the truth might not bring you the resolution you seek. It can tear apart everything you believe. I'm willing to face that, Elena insisted, her voice unwavering. I won't shy away from the darkness. If we're going to do this, we do it together. And so began their reluctant partnership, a conflation of necessity and unspoken attraction that neither was willing to acknowledge. Days turned into weeks as they delved deeper into the underbelly of the Bratva, navigating the treacherous waters of Mafia politics and personal vendettas. Each exchange was layered with tension. Elena's intelligence and bravery began to pierce through Victor's stoicism, revealing moments of vulnerability that surprised even him. One evening, as they pored over documents detailing her father's dealings, Elena noticed Victor leaning against the desk, a rare softness in his demeanor as he explained the complexities of their operations. It's not just about power, he mused, almost to himself. It's about control. Without it, everything crumbles. Is that why you're so guarded? Elena asked, gauging his reaction. You fear losing control? He straightened, the wall between them rising once more. Control is crucial in my world, Elena. You cannot afford to be weak. Weakness invites chaos, and chaos leads to death. But we're human, Victor, she countered, her voice low but fierce. Emotions aren't weaknesses. They're what make us who we are. You can't just shut that part of yourself off. He looked at her, something flickering in his dark eyes. And what do you know about my emotions? I know they're there, she replied, her heart pounding with the intensity of the moment. I see it in the way you protect your people, how you carry the burden of your choices. You care, even if you don't want to admit it. Victor's expression hardened, but she could see the internal struggle reflected in his features. Caring gets people killed, he said, his voice laced with a hint of desperation. Or it can create loyalty, Elena pressed. You're not just a mafia boss, you're a person. You have the power to change things, to lead with strength and compassion rather than just fear. He stepped back, breaking the moment, but the air crackled with unresolved tension. As they continued to work together, the boundaries between them began to blur, leading to late-night conversations filled with revelations and guarded glances. Elena found herself on a precipice, teetering between fear and hope, questioning the growing attraction she felt toward Victor. The nights brought clarity, where their discussions lingered long after the documents were reviewed and the lights dimmed. Each vulnerable moment shared chipped away at Victor's defenses, revealing glimpses of a man burdened by choices and expectations. The chemistry between them transformed from animosity to something far more complicated, an undeniable connection fraught with challenges. But, as they delved deeper into the murky past, Elena felt the weight of Victor's world pressing down on her. The partnership, initially forged through necessity, blossomed into a complex web of emotions that neither of them could easily navigate. As they faced looming threats and encroaching dangers, the stakes kept escalating, propelling them into an uncertain future. In that charged atmosphere, Elena had no choice but to embrace her growing feelings, wrestling with the implications of their bond. She felt alive in a way she hadn't before, caught between the thrill of danger and the promise of something deeper. Comment on your favorite moment and turn on notifications, she would jokingly suggest during their late-night discussions, lightening the heaviness that often enveloped them. But beneath the surface, as Elena became more entangled in Victor's world, she recognized the risks involved. The lines between right and wrong blurred as the truth of their situation unfolded, leaving her with only one certainty: whatever happened next would change them both irrevocably. As Elena and Victor continued to navigate the precarious landscape of their partnership, the atmosphere thickened with unspoken truths and simmering emotions. Each passing day forced them to confront not only the external threats of the Bratva but also the internal conflicts that began to emerge between them. Their time spent together, once marked by suspicion and defensiveness, increasingly transformed into a complicated dance of attraction and reluctance. It was a rainy afternoon when the tension reached its peak. The sky outside mirrored the turmoil within the quiet room where they often convened. Elena tapped a pencil against the table, her mind racing through the consequences of her growing feelings for Victor. He, on the other hand, remained focused on the documents spread before him, though she could sense the weight of his thoughts hanging in the air. "Victor," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk about where this is heading." He looked up, his piercing gaze locking onto hers, filled with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "What do you mean?" "I mean us," she replied, gesturing between them. "We're in this together, but I can't ignore the fact that there's something more complex happening here." Victor's jaw tightened, the hard lines of his face betraying no emotion. "We have a job to do, Elena. Personal feelings are inevitable," she interjected, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "You can't just brush them aside like they don't matter." "Emotions can be dangerous," he replied, his voice low and steady, but she could see the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "They can cloud judgment. And yet they make us who we are," Elena pressed, her heart racing. "You act like they're a weakness, but they're also a strength. They're what make you human." For a moment, silence enveloped them, thick and heavy. Victor leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively. "Being human is a luxury I can't afford," he finally said, his voice almost a growl. "Why?" "Because of the Bratva." She leaned forward, refusing to back down. "You can't keep running away from what you feel. Sooner or later, it will catch up to you." "It already has," he admitted, the honesty in his voice surprising them both. "But I don't know how to handle it, Elena. My world is built on control and fear. If I let go..." "Then what?" she challenged gently. "What's the worst that could happen? You might find someone who cares about you despite the chaos." The tension in the room shifted, and Victor's gaze softened, just a fraction. "You're not afraid of what I am?" "Of course I am," she replied, her heart pounding. "But fear shouldn't dictate our choices. You don't have to choose fear over connection. You can fight for what's right and still allow yourself to feel." He looked away, but not before she caught the glimmer of something, longing, perhaps. "It's easier to push people away, to keep them at a distance," he murmured. "Then I don't have to worry about them getting hurt. Or about hurting them yourself," she added carefully. "But Victor, you're not the monster you think you are. You're more than your reputation." With a deep breath, he finally relaxed his posture, the defenses he had carefully cultivated starting to crumble. "I've done terrible things," he said, his voice heavy with remorse. "They haunt me." "All the more reason to seek redemption," Elena urged, stepping closer. "You don't have to face this alone. I'm here, willing to help, but you have to meet me halfway." He glanced at her, his eyes searching, and for a fleeting moment, a spark of hope began to flicker between them. Victor slowly nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing. "What do you propose?" "Let's confront the chaos together," she suggested, her determination shining through. "Let's find a way to navigate this mess, together." Their eyes locked, and Elena felt a shiver run down her spine as the electric charge between them deepened. It was as if the world around them had faded, leaving just the two of them standing on the precipice of something monumental. "Then we need to prepare," he finally said, his voice firm. "There are still those who would use us for their own gain. We need to be strategic." "Agreed," Elena replied, her mind racing with possibilities. "But we also need to trust each other. If we don't, this partnership is doomed." Victor's gaze flickered with uncertainty but also a spark of something deeper, perhaps a willingness to trust, even if it terrified him. "Trust is hard for me," he admitted. "I know," she said softly, moving even closer. "But I'm willing to earn it." The air crackled with tension as she reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. Victor lingered for a moment, then turned his gaze back to the documents, but the atmosphere had shifted. As they began to strategize their next steps, Elena felt a surge of hope. Each plan they laid out brought them one step closer to understanding both the complexities of their alliance and the emotional labyrinth they were navigating. Hours melted away as they worked, their chemistry palpable, but Elena was acutely aware of the thin line separating their professional bond from something more intimate. Late into the night, as they reviewed yet another dossier, she couldn't help but voice her thoughts. You know, Victor, if we're going to survive this, we need to embrace the risks, emotionally and physically. Leave a like to help the channel grow, she said with a hint of teasing in her voice, trying to lighten the mood. Victor's lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile, his walls momentarily cracking. You have a strange way of encouraging me, Elena. Just calling it like I see it, she replied, her heart racing. But I'm serious. We need to be prepared for anything, and that includes the possibility of trusting one another. He nodded, the gravity of her words settling in. Then let's not waste any more time. As they plunged back into their plans, the electric tension lingered in the air, hinting at the complexities of what lay ahead. Elena's heart raced as they continued to navigate the tumultuous waters of their partnership, realizing that their journey had only just begun. The atmosphere thickened as Elena and Victor stood amidst the remnants of their fragile alliance, shadows of betrayal looming large. They had come so far together, yet the recent revelation shook Elena to her core. She couldn't shake off the feeling that they were teetering on the edge of a precipice, one wrong move away from disaster. Did you even think about how this would affect us? She challenged, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. They were standing in Victor's dimly lit office, the weight of the world pressing down on them. The throbbing tension between them had transformed into a battleground of emotions. Victor's jaw clenched, his gaze hardening. I didn't choose this. You think I wanted to find myself in the middle of this chaos? His tone was harsh, but a flicker of vulnerability crossed his face, quickly smothered by his hardened demeanor. And yet you made choices, Victor, she countered, stepping closer. Choices that put everything we've worked for at risk. Do you even care about the consequences? His eyes darkened, and for a moment, Elena thought he might explode with anger. Instead, he turned away, running a hand through his hair in frustration. You don't understand what it's like to carry this burden. Every decision I make comes with a cost, and sometimes those costs are people I care about. Elena's heart softened briefly, recognizing the strain in his voice. You don't have to be alone in this. We're in this together, remember? Victor's gaze darted back to her, a storm of emotions swirling within his deep-set eyes. Together? You think it's that simple? We're on different sides of a war, Elena. I can't protect you from everything. I never asked for protection, she replied fiercely. I asked for honesty. If you want us to survive, we need to trust each other, and right now, I feel like you're holding back. He paused, the silence heavy between them. It was then that she noticed the subtle crack in his armor, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of responsibility. Do you really think I wanted to betray you? His voice was softer now, a whisper of desperation. I didn't think they would come after you. Why should I believe that? She pressed, feeling the sting of betrayal still fresh. You surrounded yourself with people who would use anyone to get what they want, and I could just be collateral damage. Victor's expression shifted, and he stepped closer, invading her space. You're not collateral damage to me, he said, his voice low and intense. You're different. I didn't plan to feel this way about you, but here we are. Elena's breath caught in her throat, the gravity of his confession hanging in the air between them. For a heartbeat, the world outside faded away as they stood in a cocoon of unspoken emotions. Victor, we can't let this get complicated, she warned, even as her heart raced at the thought of what he'd just admitted. It's too late for that, he replied, the vulnerability returning to his gaze. I've already crossed lines I never intended to. But I can't walk away from you now. Leave a like to help the channel grow. Elena said with a teasing smirk, trying to lighten the heavy atmosphere. The audacity of her attempt made Victor chuckle despite the turmoil. You really know how to cut through the tension, don't you? He replied, a hint of a smile creeping onto his lips, momentarily lightening the storm of emotions swirling in the room. But seriously, we need to focus, she continued, her expression sobering as she took a step back, reminding herself of the stakes involved. If we're going to face what's coming, we need a solid plan. No more secrets. Victor nodded, shifting back into his role as their leader. You're right. We can't afford any distractions. His tone turned serious, the weight of leadership settling back onto his shoulders. We need to anticipate their next move and set a trap of our own. They think they can play us, but they're mistaken. As they began brainstorming their next steps, Elena felt the tension shift once more, now infused with a sense of shared purpose. Their collaborative energy started to forge a new path forward. Each suggestion they made strengthened the bond they were reluctantly fostering. First, we need to gather intel on their operations, see where they're weakest, she advised, her mind racing with possibilities. If we can cut off their resources, we'll dismantle their strength from the inside. Victor leaned over the desk, his focus sharpening as he scribbled notes. Agreed. I have some contacts who might have information. They owe me favors, and it's time to call them in. Elena felt a rush of adrenaline as they delved deeper into their strategy, outlining potential moves like pieces on a chessboard. Each idea they exchanged felt like a step closer to dismantling the chaos that threatened their lives. As they discussed their plans, moments of silence permeated the room, filled with unspoken words and lingering glances. The attraction simmered beneath the surface, the tension thickening each time their eyes met. Yet, they both understood the stakes were far too high for romance to blossom just yet. Finally, they paused, exhausted yet exhilarated. We'll need to be careful, Victor stated, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of anxiety. The moment we make a move, there will be no turning back. Elena nodded, her determination surging. Then let's ensure that our first move counts. We need to catch them off guard. The reality of their partnership settled over them like a shroud, heavy yet oddly comforting in its complexity. Victor's presence, once a source of fear, now offered her a strange sense of security. She knew he was capable of both destruction and protection, and therein lay the deepest conflict of all. As they prepared to face the storm ahead, Elena felt the electric current between them pulse stronger than ever. Their connection, forged in the flames of adversity, became an anchor amidst the chaos they were about to enter together. She realized that they were not merely surviving, they were choosing to fight, not just for their lives, but also for the chance to redefine their shared path. As the dust settled from their recent confrontation, Elena and Victor faced the aftermath with a heavy silence that filled the room. The tension they had navigated was palpable, each moment woven with unspoken truths and the weight of their decisions. With emotions still raw and the reality of their choices looming over them, they began to confront the consequences of their actions. Elena looked at Victor, her eyes searching for answers. We need to talk about what just happened, she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. The vulnerability in Victor's eyes had shaken her deeply, igniting a conflict within her. Was it possible to trust him, even after everything? Victor rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture of frustration mixed with contemplation. I know I've made mistakes, Elena. I've let my emotions cloud my judgment. But you have to understand, this world, the Bratva, it warps everything. It twists loyalty and makes it hard to see the truth. His voice was laced with frustration and regret, revealing a glimpse of the internal struggle he faced. Elena took a breath, steadying herself. I get that you're trapped in this life, but I'm not. I didn't choose any of this, and yet here I am, entangled in your chaos. A fire burned behind her words, a determination to assert her independence without dismissing the connection that had grown between them. Victor's eyes softened, and he took a step closer, closing the distance that had grown between them. You're right. You didn't ask for this, and I never intended to drag you into my world. But I can't let you go now, not when I realize how much you mean to me. His confession hung in the air between them, thick with meaning and unspoken promises. Elena's heart skipped a beat, but she pushed the feeling aside. This isn't about us right now, Victor. We have bigger problems to face. If we're going to move forward, we need to confront the aftermath of what happened. Leave a like to help the channel grow. Victor quipped, trying to lighten the mood just a fraction, a hint of humor breaking through the fog of tension. Despite the gravity of their situation, he appreciated her spirit. She rolled her eyes but couldn't help but smile. Seriously, we need to strategize. We can't afford any more distractions. I won't let my feelings compromise our safety. Victor nodded, his expression shifting from vulnerability to that of a leader once more. All right. What's our next move? Elena felt the strategic gears in her mind start to turn again. We need to gather intel on Dimitri's operations. If he thinks he can take advantage of our chaos, we have to show him he's mistaken. Victor leaned over the desk, pulling out a notepad and jotting down ideas as she spoke. I have contacts who owe me favors. I can reach out and see what information they can provide. It's time we turn the tables. As they mapped out their plan, a sense of empowerment surged within Elena. This was her chance to take control of her destiny. The thrill of the game, the calculations and strategies, ignited her spirit. The energy between her and Victor shifted again, now charged with a sense of purpose. Elena laid out the details, her confidence growing as she spoke. If we can cut off their supply routes, it will hit them hard. They won't know what hit them. Exactly, Victor replied, his eyes gleaming with admiration. You have a sharp mind for this. I never underestimated your intelligence, but seeing you in action, it's impressive. His words ignited warmth in her chest, but she quickly buried it under the weight of their reality. We can't let it go to our heads, Victor. Each step has to be calculated. We've already come too far to make mistakes. Victor's expression turned serious. Understood. Once we gather the information, we will plan our strike carefully. We can't leave any room for error. They worked in tandem, their minds aligning as they maneuvered through their plans. Each suggestion they exchanged felt like a step closer to dismantling the chaos and finding solid ground. As they mapped out possible moves, Elena's thoughts lingered on the undeniable connection weaving itself between them, a bond strengthened under pressure. Yet, under the flicker of strategy, doubt crept in. Would they be able to separate their personal feelings from the mission at hand? Each time Victor's gaze lingered on her, the tension reignited, a constant reminder of the fragile line they were walking. Finally, after what felt like hours of strategizing, they paused, both feeling the exhaustion of their internal and external battles. What if they strike first? Elena voiced her concern, her mind racing with scenarios. We need to be ready for anything. Victor's lips tightened in thought. I'll make sure to bolster our defenses. We can't afford to be caught off guard. Elena studied him, the weight of their situation pressing down on her like a solid wall. And what about us? If we're going to make it through this, we need to figure out who we are to each other beyond this conflict. That's the hardest part, he admitted, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of longing and conflict. This world doesn't allow for weakness. But, perhaps, we can create a new definition of strength together. As the words hung between them, Elena felt the pull of their connection deepen. They were amidst chaos, but in that moment, amidst the shadows of their existence, the flicker of something genuine sparked between them. They weren't just allies, they were partners navigating a treacherous path, perhaps even in the making of something more. Their eyes locked, and in that charged silence, they both understood the complexities of their relationship, the intertwining of duty and emotion. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, Elena realized they were not just fighting for their lives but for a chance to redefine everything they thought they knew about loyalty, trust, and perhaps even love. As the dust settled around them, Elena and Victor stood in a space saturated with both tension and a strange sense of camaraderie. The fallout of their recent confrontations hung heavily in the air, but the weight of their decisions brought them closer, forcing a reckoning of sorts. In the aftermath of chaos, they began to confront the reality of their relationship, the fragile threads connecting them pulling taut against the backdrop of the tumultuous world they inhabited. Elena took a deep breath, contemplating the swirling emotions within her. It had been a roller coaster of feelings, anger, fear, and an unexpected bond that grew in the shadows of their challenges. We have to acknowledge what we've been through, she said, her voice steady yet soft. This war, this chaos, it's changed us. But it doesn't have to dictate who we become. Victor studied her, his expression a mix of contemplation and something deeper, something he had yet to fully accept. You're right. But in this world, admitting vulnerability feels like giving in. It's a dangerous game. His voice was low, a hint of regret lacing his words. He seemed to grapple with the very idea of allowing himself to be seen beyond the Mafia persona he had built over the years. Elena stepped closer, her heart racing at the proximity. It doesn't have to be weakness. There is strength in acknowledging what we feel, even amidst all the chaos. She could sense the walls he had built around himself slowly crumbling, and she wanted to reach through the rubble. If we're going to survive this, we need to be honest, about everything. He remained silent, his gaze drifting past her, as if searching for clarity in the confusion of their situation. She could almost see the gears turning in his mind, weighing the risks of his heart against the demands of his world. The Mafia doesn't allow for weakness, Elena. If they sense any crack in my facade, it could cost lives. What about our lives, Victor? She pressed. What if we are doing this wrong? What if we're so focused on survival that we forget to live? Her voice was a plea, filled with the desperate need for connection that lingered between them like an unspoken truth. His eyes finally met hers, and the intensity of the moment held them captive. Living in my world means constantly calculating risks. There's no room for sentiment. Yet even as he spoke, she could hear the tremor in his voice, the conflict that waged within him. Elena reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm, and he flinched slightly at the unexpected contact. You've been carrying the weight of this world alone, she said softly. What if I shared that burden with you? We can be stronger together. Together, yes, he mused, his brow furrowing as he processed her words. But there are lines that once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Trust isn't so easily given in my world. It's a currency that can be spent, but never returned. Maybe we can redefine what trust means, she suggested, her heart racing as the air thickened between them. I'm not asking for blind faith, I'm asking for a choice. A choice to trust each other with our lives and our hearts, despite the chaos. Victor's eyes held hers, the battle within him becoming visible. The shifting currents of their relationship were palpable, a mix of fear, hope, and unacknowledged desire. Elena, he said carefully, if you choose to trust me, I can promise you my loyalty. But there are no guarantees. My world is built on unpredictability. I understand that, she urged, stepping even closer, the connection between them becoming electric. But what you must realize is that loyalty can exist alongside vulnerability. It's not about losing control, it's about finding strength in what you fear the most. He studied her for a long moment, the silence stretching between them, thick with unspoken words. In that span of time, Elena felt the walls between them crumbling, piece by piece. I've never had someone challenge me like this, Victor finally admitted, the weight of truth coloring his admission. It frightens me. A smile tugged at her lips. Then let's embrace that fear together. You don't have to face it alone anymore. As if a dam had broken, Victor stepped closer, the intensity of his gaze holding her captive. You might be the only person who sees through the armor I've worn for so long. But it's terrifying to let someone in. I'm not looking to take anything from you, Victor. I just want to walk alongside you in this. The atmosphere shifted, a sense of understanding settling between them. They were both aware of the dangers that lay ahead, yet in that shared moment of vulnerability, they found a semblance of peace amidst the storm. As they edged closer, the embrace of their emotions hung thickly in the air, pushing them toward an inevitable realization. The world outside might be filled with danger, but in each other, they had discovered a flicker of hope, a light shining even in the darkest corners of their existence. Suddenly, Victor pulled back slightly, assessing her with newfound determination. I will protect you, no matter what happens. You deserve that much, he declared, his voice firm yet gentle. And I'll fight for you, Elena replied, the sincerity in her words binding them further. Then we'll face this together, he concluded, his resolve shining through, a promise wrapped in both strength and fragility. As they prepared to step back into the chaos, their hearts aligned, fortified by the emotional journey they had navigated. They understood that love could grow even in the darkest of places, and with each step they took into the unknown, they carried a piece of the other within them, a promise, a hope, and the undeniable truth that they would find a way through together. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep following their journey.